Hello, this is Steve Ramona, your host for Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. I want to thank our sponsors, Infone, and with Infone, you can place your business on everybody's cell phone, turn their business into a web app, and with a click of a button, they'll have access to you 24/7. And also Pantheon.fm. Have you ever thought about monetizing and taking your podcast to the next level? Well, Pantheon can do that. Let us show you how. Reach out to Steve Ramona, the host, at infone.co/SR1, and I will go over with you how you can make your podcast really stand out. Let's enjoy the show. Thanks again, everybody. Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. This is your host, Steve Ramona. And I have another great guest, but she's more than great. She's awesome because she's got a cool story. And for you people out there who think, hey, man, I'm struggling, listen to my guest. Kat, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, let's jump into your story and what has happened. And, you know, it's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there are people out there who wouldn't be quite as public as I am in terms of sharing their story, but it's a huge part of, well, who I am clearly and the business that I've built. So I have complex PTSD. Obviously most of us are familiar with PTSD, especially in terms of vets. So when you add that complex word, it just means that someone has experienced multiple traumatic events. In my case, I experienced a few traumatic events during my childhood, which sort of colored my entire adulthood. And then about 5 years ago, I experienced 3 back-to-back traumas, ending with my mom passing away. So, right in that time frame is when I was diagnosed with CPTSD. And I'm happy to go into how that influenced the business I'm running, but I want to take your lead.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Not the story's not, but the end result's going to be incredible, yeah. Listeners. Want to classify that when I say fantastic, like, God, she's told about. No, there's a reason for this. And you're a single mom, am I correct?
I am. I am a single mom to 2 badass young women.
Love it. And that throw that into the mix of everything else you said, and you're here sitting today with me. Thank you again. And building an incredible marketing agency. And let's talk about trauma marketing, which you mentioned before the show, how it came about and what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am teaching brands how to implement trauma-informed marketing, and also strength-based marketing, which is sort of a subset of trauma-informed marketing. And I think as business people, you hear the word trauma and you're like, what? Like, what could that possibly mean? But the reality is, just as human beings, we've all experienced, major traumatic events. Take just COVID alone, right? We don't need to talk about people necessarily with PTSD or complex PTSD like myself, but, just solo, let's isolate the one thing of the pandemic where, the entire globe went through a collective trauma with, being isolated, being at home, like not being able to leave the house, losing friends and family members. The last statistic I saw was that 40% of people know someone that passed away from COVID. And that doesn't include anyone that may have passed away for just normal health reasons during that point in time. I was having a conversation the other day about that with someone, and he's like, I lost about 10 friends during the pandemic, and none of it was COVID related. It was, they weren't able to go to the doctor. They weren't able to leave the house. And particularly with kids, I mean, we're going to feel this as a collective trauma for, hundreds and hundreds of years to come.
Yeah, I've got a couple of psychiatrists on my, actually a child trauma psychiatrist. So when you said that, he said the same thing. He said, we're 5 years out before we see the real result of this. And that's good. So we're aware of it. And trauma it's funny you say that. I love how you said that business go trauma. Well, you have a restaurant, your employee doesn't show up. That's trauma. How am I going to fit in? Who's going to fail? Do I do it? I got to change things? Trauma has this like PTSD stigma, not stigma, but thought process. Trauma is as low as that. I can't make payroll. That's trauma. How am I going to fix that? And you help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been this need to define trauma into little T's and big T's the last few years. Something that I think does a big disservice to anyone who's experienced trauma, which, face it, is absolutely everyone. Because what's traumatic for me, may not be traumatic for you, or vice versa, right? Like perhaps you've experienced something and I'm like, well, I've had this thing happen to me, but for you, it was really important and really traumatic. And I think the game of like comparing traumas is a losing one. So that said, and like knowing not only is the statistics, but right when I was sort of in the midst of my diagnosis and like, quite frankly, not in an awesome place, I realized, after a career of being a marketing executive, that I was perceiving marketing messages very differently, and whether that was email or social or, a piece of direct mail, just correspondence from a company I deal with, that I was just perceiving messages very differently. And I knew there was something to it. I was putting it in the lens of customer experience. I wasn't sure exactly where it was going to go yet. And, I remember in that time frame that there were a lot of companies, like Salesforce comes to mind. They were talking about 360-degree customer experiences. And as I was noticing, I was perceiving things differently. I thought, maybe 280 on a good day. Yeah. And so, I started putting together the framework and doing a lot of research. During the pandemic, I actually went back and I got a certification in being a trauma-informed professional. And then I also, I say I accidentally got a full-time job as the pandemic started. Feel very fortunate since that was the opposite for many people. But when that job ended about a year ago, I realized that I was ready and that I owed it to myself to really give this business a shot. And so now I consult with companies, primarily consumer-facing brands, about how to implement this type of marketing. And it is a brand new niche, which is super exciting.
It is new and comes to mind, I'm sure, for the audience as well. You've really spelled out trauma, which thank you. You did a great job. And being through it, it's a little bit easier because you're experiencing it. Yeah. So what is trauma marketing and what can the listeners glean from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, as a marketer, it's just taking a beat in order to think about how someone might perceive your messaging. One of my favorite examples is just thinking about holidays. So holidays in general are really triggering events for most people, even end of year holidays, right? It's a time of year where those last 6 weeks of the year for a company is like 25 or more % of their revenue. But at the same time, as consumers and human beings, like we're all like, having to plan traveling in general, which is really stressful, traveling to family, which is even more stressful, right? And so how do you balance that, right? A really great holiday example that I talk about a lot is like a Mother's or Father's Day campaign. So There are a few brands doing this. Etsy comes to mind, Ancestry. The first time I actually saw it was a brand called Uncommon Goods. And they sent out an SMS campaign that said, hey, we know this time of year might be tough for you. Click here to opt out of our Mother's Day messaging. And for me as a consumer, it was the first Mother's Day without my mom. And I immediately was like, they see me. And I don't think that, that statement of being seen and heard by the companies you're doing business with can be taken lightly. And so not only did I have this amazing consumer experience, and yes, I did click to opt out, right? Because you're bombarded by those messages. It's like every post that you're scrolling through, every email, every commercial, like Mother's Day, Mother's Day, Mother's Day, don't forget your mom. But as a marketer, I'm like, oh my goodness, they're just segmenting their customer database. How smart, right? And so you can do both at once, right? You can still do things that are going to drive your sales, are going to engage your customers, increase loyalty, but you're doing it human to human. So I think that's a really good creative example. It could also be like around the same holidays where, you could see a brand for Mother's Day send out messaging like to all moms, and to all dads that are the moms, right? Or to all grandparents that are the parents, right? Because the notion of like the traditional family is kind of out the window at this point.
Yeah.
It's
different.
If it was ever a thing.
Yeah.
Families look all shapes, sizes, all sorts of ways. And, I certainly feel it, right? I'm a single mom. There are ways to just think, just pause, take a beat, right? Before you send out that campaign or that message, of how it might hit someone when they're looking or engaging with your messaging.
I would like to know the stats of when they did that opt out on Mother's Day, how many people came back? Because they opt out and a week goes by and they might see an advertisement for them. I'm going to opt back in because they did what they did.
Yeah.
To support those people that don't have money. I lost my dad in 2017. It's been 6 years, but still everybody that's lost a parent or parents, it's always going to affect you just less and less. But it's rare that a company thinks of us as individuals and not this mass. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we talk about customer experience, but I think in general that just forgets an individual's life experience, right? And, whether or not you want to use the word trauma, we've all experienced so many different things and highs and lows. And, you get presented with images and messaging and, scenarios where you get triggered, and you can get triggered in a positive way. There's probably a better word for it, but essentially like it, hits you in a really positive way, makes you think of something happy, right? But just taking that pause. I know, again, for me, like I had been a fan of Uncommon Goods for years, probably over a decade at that point. But the customer loyalty that we talk about as marketers, which, there's nothing that marketers are better at. I can make fun of myself as creating new buzzwords. But the kind of loyalty that gets created here is something different. And again, you see me kind of like, I always instinctually sort of point here at, on my chest, my solar plexus, because that is where this is all living. Like this kind of loyalty, this is where trauma lives. This is like, it's right in your heart, right? And right. And so what's created is, doesn't matter whether or not I opted out to that Mother's Day messaging, right? No, what matters is that I'm never going to opt out at all from Uncommon Goods.
Yeah.
Anytime I
Yeah.
need to, buy a gift for someone, I'm going to think of them. And, I don't know. I'm waiting for, I feel like I should wait for a check from them because I have, I have used this example so many times.
Well, you hear that, Uncommon Goods? Any
Yeah.
employees out there, the CEO, reach out to me. I'll get you connected with Kat. Let's get her paid.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because emotional marketing is a big buzz thing now. I have a friend that does that very well. And it's been back to Marlboro man days.
Yep.
People, it was going bankrupt, that company, Marlboro. And once they put that guy up and every guy smoking a cigarette looked like the Marlboro man, hey, everybody guys raise your hand. That's what you're talking about. You're just taking a negative and turning into a positive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could certainly look at even like strength-based marketing in that lens, because what we've all been taught for years, right, is fear-based marketing. We have to create urgency, and marketers more and more are beholden to the stockholders and analysts and upper management, and there's so much pressure. And I've been brand side my entire career until now. So like, I feel you, like, I know what it's like. But, so it's like, how can we create urgency? How can we, make the sale goal? How can we, increase revenue, like whatever it is. And there's so much pressure. And so we turn to these techniques that we've, that have been around since, honestly, like, I don't know, advertising has existed, which is, essentially creating FOMO, whether it's, limited time, limited quantity, or, we used to, we used to say, you had to keep up with the Joneses, and now you need to keep up with Zendaya, like, who is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, no,
but yeah, I mean, I think you can achieve what you need to achieve, but you can just flip the switch a little, right? So let's talk about it through an inventory lens, right? Maybe you really do have a product that's selling like hotcakes. The inventory is limited. Although I'm sure there are many of us who are guilty of claiming limited quantities when that's not quite true, right?
Yeah.
But say like you have this product that is just like going mad, and everyone's snapping it up. But the messaging you send out about it can either be, you better get it before it's gone, which is the traditional fear-based way, or you can say, hey, we know this is a customer favorite this month. And I think beauty brands in particular are really great at this one. But, and they wouldn't put that terminology to it at all, but you're looking at the same data points. You're saying, okay, these 3 or 4 or 5 products are our top selling ones this month. Let's, in our next email, let's call them out, but call it out in a really positive way. It drives just as many sales, if not more.
Yeah. And it's positive spin. No, I like that. FOMO is a big thing, and we all get caught up in doing it. And it's sad because it's so negative. Even if you got something good, you're going to change the world. It's just, it rubs my back wrong. I'll just say that. And I've done it too. So I'm guilty. So I'm understanding.
Absolutely.
We've all
Absolutely.
done. I mean, yeah, we've done it. Well, that leads to the software, which you're so excited you just launched recently. Let's talk about, run a little time, but we got time. I want to talk about the software, what it does and what your mission is with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I created this business, like I definitely recognize that throwing trauma and marketing together, like it sells for those who buy in, but it's a hard sell. I'm not, not gonna lie. And, so I sat down and I thought about the customer analytics products that were out there that were really like telling you how your customers felt, whether or not they believed in you, things like the Net Promoter Score, which is, would you recommend us to a friend? And I just thought there has to be a better way. And so my business is based around 3 core tenets, which is radical empathy, radical vulnerability, and radical authentic investment. And I realize that these 3 tenets could be developed into, a psychology or psychometric based survey that would really get at this trauma informed, or as I call it, brand sensitivity. So we now have this analysis, this product out. We're calling it the cancel culture checkup, because as we know, we live in a cancel culture. And whether it's a celebrity or a brand, it happens all the time. And, brand side in particular, it's not like there's a group of people sitting around thinking about how to ruin someone's day, like that's not the reality. But, we can now, you can go in, you can send the survey to as many of your customers by email or social. It's included in the platform. There's no cost in terms of how many you send it to, unlike many other products out there. There's also an audience that you can pull separately than your own customer database. And, what it turns around is how you measure up in terms of these 3 core tenets, and identifies your risk factors, and then makes suggestions of what you can do to implement. And I mean, there's just nothing like it out there. I am beyond excited about it because I really do think of it as a game changer. I believe that it is. Not only do I think that it changes the brand and marketing world, but ultimately it is changing lives on the consumer side, because we already talked about COVID, right? But like, we're in the middle of a mental health crisis that's only getting worse, particularly with young people who are getting on social earlier and earlier. It's a whole different kind of peer pressure, right? And we see the news every day. Like, I'm getting a little, right? But there's a responsibility that we have to take, as companies, as to like, what our messages are, what the unintended consequences of our messages may be. And so this tool really gives you deep insights that you can't get anywhere else. And I guess maybe I should stop selling it, but I really am genuinely that excited about it.
No, I love it. Your passion for it's fantastic. And with that, we're running out of time here, but how can people get a hold of you to learn about the software, maybe get the software, of course, talk to you about your services?
Yeah, absolutely. So the website is radicalcustomerexperience.com. You can also hit me on email, kat@radicalcustomerexperience.com. And I'm on almost all the social networks under Kat Keenan. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. Please, any questions, want to, try the survey out, just, take it for a test drive, give me a holler.
Well, let's do this. I'm going to give $20 Amazon gift card for the first 3 people that reach out to you. How's that sound? So what you're going to do is reach out, mention my name, podcast, just so she knows it's our podcast that you heard. She may even test you to see if you listen. I'm half kidding. I'm not worried about that. What I want to do is build a marketing, and it's not FOMO. This is, I'm rewarding you for taking a step to learn about this, because it is very unique. And if you have a passion-based brand or product or service, you're a perfect fit for her, because that's what she's doing. Am I correct? That's what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Bringing the heart out, bringing that baby heart out. Okay, let's do that. So first 3 people mentioned to her, and I'll get your email, and I'll do an email Amazon gift card, and you guys enjoy that. With that being said, thank you so much for being on. I learned a little about you a couple of weeks ago. I know a lot more about you today, and I support you 1,000,000%. And we'll keep working together. And I want to bring you back next month. I want to learn more about this and some other ways we can bring that heart out more. I want that heart popping out of that chest when the brand is working, not be the big corporate, we got this great thing, but we're taking from you. We want no more takers. This is a servant show. Let's serve. So with that being said, what's one tip you can leave my audience that's helped you?
Being gentle with yourself.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Take the time. Life is really freaking hard, whether it's at work, at home, and all the places. Just let yourself take a beat. Go stare at the wall. Go walk around the block. Take a nap. Be gentle with yourself.